Hello guys and welcome to episode 12 of What the Tech. My name is Adam Lobo.
And I'm Vernon, back again.
And first and foremost, Selamat Hari Raya for all of our Muslim friends and family members. That was one of the reasons why we kind of took off last week, because everybody needed a break, especially the team behind the scenes. I came back to work right after Raya. What did you do for Raya holidays?
Ate a lot, had food coma.
Okay.
But of course, right after the next day, we're back to work. So
There you go.
same as you, same.
So half of the team is back finally. We could have recorded this yesterday, but since the team is back today, so that's the reason why we are here. Good to be back. I've missed you. Hopefully you've been doing well. And
Good to be back too.
And we missed all of you all too. So this is episode 12. We're going to move
There's so much stuff. There's
We wanna
too
try
much
to-
stuff. It's been an exciting week, right?
Exactly.
Of news and stuff.
Even our releases, we released a total of 5 videos last week. So we're going to be talking about that. But let's dive into the news. We do have, there are tons of news, but we wanted to narrow down on the things that we've covered and the things which has just been recently released. Mm-hmm. So, of course, the highlight just recently was the Nintendo Switch 2. Thankfully, we didn't do the podcast yesterday. Everything happens for a reason. Otherwise, we would have missed this particular topic. We're going to be also talking about the HUAWEI Pura X, which is HUAWEI is becoming so innovative with this. The reason why we were also absent was because I was in Singapore for the POCO global launch.
The super secret launch.
Yeah, the secret one, the embargo launch. Yes, and it was quite interesting. I'll talk about that also. AirAsia has power bank restrictions. For those of you who are watching this podcast, not in Malaysia, AirAsia is a company, low-cost carrier from Malaysia. So in case you all did not know, AirAsia is from Malaysia. And WWDC has the official dates, which is on the 9th of June. Mm-hmm. We're going to be also talking about how their latest update has lossless audio for the AirPods Max. And you found something very interesting on YouTube, which week we want to be talking about that. And we'll be answering reacting to the community segment on what are your priorities in purchasing a smartphone. And behind the scenes, both Vernon and I were very shocked by the answers, because the highest top answer was something that we personally did not really care about. So we're going to dive every single thing in this particular topic. So Vernon, let's start off with the HUAWEI Pura X. So what is your take on HUAWEI's new approach of this particular vertically folding smartphone as opposed to what has been released for other smartphones?
I feel it's a very different take on it. Foldables have been around, 5-6 years?
Yeah.
Or maybe a little bit more.
Probably.
And there's kind of two ways to go about foldable phones. There's the flip kind of format, and then there's the fold, which is like a bigger kind of a bigger form factor, right? I'm not sure you're a fan of whether of the flip or the fold. For me personally, it's the flip. So it's a smaller form factor that opens up to kind of like a bigger device. I like the Pura X because it's a little bit squarish. And the fact that you kind of not open it vertically, open it sideways.
Yeah, sideways. Yeah, correct.
Which is nice. It kind of reminds me of the Surface Duo. Microsoft had its own foldable, which didn't do very well. But I like that because of the screen real estate and the ratio that it's in, 16 by 10, which kind of makes more sense in terms of the ability to display a bit more stuff on the screen. I like it. Obviously, hardware-wise, it's really good, top-of-the-line flagship stuff. But there is a little thing that, of course, when you talk about HUAWEI devices, you'll have to talk about Google services. So that's something that we should talk about as well.
I agree. First and foremost, like I said, the idea of it folding this way or the sideways is quite interesting. Like you can see this picture reference, which Apit is showing. That's actually quite nice. Is refreshing. And I think at this point in time, HUAWEI is the only company who's doing things different. Right? They were the first one who introduced the trifold HUAWEI Mate XT. Right now, they're not stopping. I agree. We've always talked about how software is very important, but as long as it will be released in Malaysia officially, then we don't have to worry about that. But I think this whole Google issue, it's a bit more catered towards people who are not getting the phone release in their particular area. But I think as long as it will be released in Malaysia, it should be fine. It's same like the Huawei Mate XT. Thankfully, the global launch was in Malaysia. It's nice that a lot of companies are starting to do more launches towards our side of the region.
That's true. And it's not China exclusive like some people thought it was.
Yes, so that was quite surprising. Now, whether or not this is going to be released in Malaysia, we do not have the official word from Huawei. But I think when they release their own Flip and their Fold, I don't know why, but it seems like their Flip was not as easily accepted compared to the Fold. Like they just released the X6, the Mate X6, which is the foldable, and they were one of the first ones who came up with the super thin ones.
Yeah.
Of course, Honor claimed that they came up first because they are, in the end of the day, they say they're different, but they're the same. I like the camera arrays though. You see how it is arranged, and it is a triple camera setup.
I think it'll be the first in any flip device, right? I mean, flip form factor.
Exactly. So the specs also, they did not compromise at all. There's a 50 megapixel main, a 40 megapixel ultra wide lens, and also an 8 megapixel telephoto lens. And it all has OIS. So imagine holding it and then you just, like use it as a vlogging camera, or you can even do like how I did it, or a lot of people did with the Samsung Z Flip, the camcorder style. So that actually is quite good. The battery size is 4,720 milliamps of battery, which is split into two cells.
Yeah. Pretty impressive
and
for that
they
size.
support 66 watts of wired charging and 40 watts of wireless charging. So that is great. Now, because it's not released globally yet, hopefully they will, it will run on Harmony OS 5.0. So that will be the software.
Which is I found it a bit strange.
Yeah.
That it's the slightly older version and not the Harmony OS Next,
Yeah.
which is their current.
That's a very good point, because I didn't pay attention to that until you mentioned that. Yeah, so that's a very good
Not sure where that comes from. What's the reasoning behind that?
point. It could be because of the whole aspect ratio of it. Maybe they felt like it was easier to integrate the older generation as opposed to the latest ones. But what's interesting is that we have the price if we convert it from Chinese, their Chinese yuan to the Malaysian ringgit. So the base model, if you look at it, is at 7,499 Chinese yuan. But if you convert it, it is close to 4,574 ringgit. What is your take on that particular
I mean, these foldable phones are not cheap. What's the price for the Galaxy?
I think about there, if the last I checked.
I believe it's around 4,000 as well, right?
If we are not
It's
comparing
SLS
with the Samsung Z Flip, what do you think for a smartphone which has this unique form factor? Do you think 4,500 ringgit-ish is a good price?
It's accessible in terms of a foldable form factor, I would say. And compared to the bigger fold type designs, that it's like 3 times the price, or at least 2 times the price of that.
I think software optimization is also very important, because with this kind of aspect ratio, hopefully apps like Instagram or YouTube, especially Instagram, with their whole, how they always change things behind the scenes. I am eager to see how it looks from a software perspective,
Right.
especially knowing the fact that they're not using the latest Harmony OS software. So that is something that we definitely want to look forward to. But other than that, it looks very promising. Again, I love the fact that they are way more innovative with what exactly that they have. And speaking of flip, like even Xiaomi's Mix Flip, even though they came up with their whole, full screen in front, it was great. But I personally like what Huawei has done over here, where the screen is, it's not covering the whole cover, because they really emphasize on how important the camera is. And it is arranged in a way whereby it is easier to see and easy to access. Because if you're going to have a screen all around it, I think that the usability wise is not going to be as intuitive as doing something like this.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Yeah.
If you were to see this particular design that they have right now, like the camera and the hardware, is there anything that you would change based on what they have?
I don't think there's anything that I would like to change. I think it looks great from the get-go. Design-wise is really spot on. I like that they really have a different take on it, doing something different from the rest of the market. The only thing I don't like is actually the collector's edition. I don't really like the way the pattern and the way it's tiled, the colors. I think the standard black, white, or silver would probably look just fine.
Huawei tends to go a bit more wild when it comes to
trying to be fashionable in that sense.
They try, but I think in the end of the day, it's how good the device works. But at least they're trying something different. We'll give full credit for them for trying something totally different.
Yeah. But something I wanted to bring up was what's interesting is that the Pura X is powered by the Kirin.
Oh, yes.
1920 processor, which is very interesting because it also has an ARM core. So the 4 efficiency CPU cores are actually ARM licensed, which brings up the question is how did they do that? Since Huawei is on the US Entity List 2020. So apparently when I looked this up, this was pre-2020.
Wow. Wow, that long?
Pre-2020.
Okay.
These 4 efficiency cores that were from ARM, and hence that's why they could integrate it with the other cores in this octa-core chip. And I think it's the same chip that's powering the Mate 70 flagship series of last year.
But one would wonder, like, if this is, because of the fact that they still don't have the authority to use the components from the US, why isn't it like it's been several years? Huawei has been doing an amazing job in coming up with trifolds and all. Why do you think that Huawei hasn't come up with their own chipset?
I mean, they do have their own chipsets.
Yeah, but meaning
it's just that maybe in terms of performance, it's not quite there yet with the Snapdragons of the world, with the Apple Silicons of the world. Maybe not yet, but I'm sure they're somewhere.
They will be coming. It's just that the question is when. And when they do, then we all know how powerful it can be. We don't know whether that is the case and whether or not they're really working behind the scenes on that. But I think once they do that, because the question has always been that whenever they release a phone, everybody goes, what chip are you using? What chip are you using? Say, how did they do this, right? So it always comes down to the answer whereby like, this was before it happened,
It's Huawei, they always find a way.
Yeah, that's why I'm known as Huawei. My way or the Huawei. My way on the Huawei. Okay. That is the first story that we have for today. We have tons more, like I mentioned. So I was in Singapore for the POCO F7 series launch. Now, if you have been following our regular YouTube videos, you all know that when it comes to the F series phone from POCO, it is one of the so-called viewers' favorites. And I just say about how, like, Huawei has done their launch in Malaysia. It's nice that the global launch for the POCO is done in Singapore. It's close to us, but I did meet some of the US tech YouTubers like Danny and Board at Work and all. They were there, so it's nice. And because they finally feel what we are feeling, like, traveling very far away.
Yeah. They don't get left out.
Exactly. So it is nice that they are there. And I believe like this would be hopefully a very positive thing for other YouTubers to also come to our side of the region, because what I heard is that when Samsung did their Unpacked in Korea, one of the reasons why they went back to doing it in the US is because when they did their Unpacked in Korea, the majority of the media from US did not come to Korea.
Oh, why was that?
This was, why or when?
Yeah, why?
Because they said it's far.
What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we're not going to go into who didn't make it, but I mean, I liked the Korea Unpack. I was there, and the integration within the flip and the fold when it was released was really nice. So hopefully now that we have more global launches on our side of the region is great.
I mean, for me, I would love to fly to the US, and even though it takes hours and hours to get there.
Yeah.
But I mean, for a change, they could fly to our region instead.
As long as there's some sort of a balance, I think that'd be great. Yeah. I welcome both the US launches and also our region launches, but this was quite interesting because POCO did it in Marina Bay Sands, which is understandable. Right after the launch, we got an interview session with the head of product as well. Quite interesting because something which I will mention in my in-depth review is that because I wondered why was there no POCO F7 like base model, right? There's the Ultra, there's the Pro. Like the Xiaomi 15, there was the base Xiaomi 15 and then there's the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. The Pro was launched but only in China. But it's funny how POCO came out with the Pro and the Ultra, there's no base. So even for me, creating content, I'm like, so I like the F6, right? For me, I felt like the F6 finally could have beaten the legendary F3. So that was quite interesting.
Was that like one of your favorite phones for a long time?
Yes.
Right? The F3.
Yes. It is not only my favorite. It's a lot of people.
I mean, a lot of fan favorite. It was a fan
people
favorite.
Call it the king until today. It's like generation 3. Of course, the F1 was the biggest king of all. But yeah, F2 was a bit not so great. It was X2 if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I was a little surprised that they didn't release a base model. So when we got the device first, they told us that I have the POCO F7. Are you interested? I said, of course. Pass it over. We have. I said, which is the ones that you're passing over? They said, passing the Ultra. I'm like, huh? Is that an Ultra? So of course I couldn't mention about it. And yes, they have an Ultra. We are going to be doing an in-depth review on this. But my first impressions, I haven't got my hands on the 7 Pro yet. And based on what I have gathered is that the 7 has a way bigger battery. But other than that, there are some compromises here and there. But
I mean, the flagship is still the Ultra, right?
It is. And it's the first time that the F series has an Ultra. They never had an Ultra. It was either the regular or the Pro. Or there's sometimes whereby it's just the regular, right? But there are still two areas which I still, for the life of me, cannot understand. Which I have mentioned in my hands-on video and I'll mention it in my in-depth review, which I found another thing, which only when I tested the cameras further. Number one is year 2025, but yet they cannot record 4K front camera.
Front camera, yeah.
I did ask the head of product, the one who is presenting, and he said, the cameras was one of the areas where they were struggling to do their best. So they are always trying to improve. I totally disagree because the cameras were actually really good. I don't understand.
I mean, it's very honest of them to admit that.
Yeah. I think the whole interview session was nice. I think it was like
they tend
10,
not to do that, right?
Yes,
I mean,
exactly. There were 10 people in total in the interview session. But one thing which I also mentioned right after the launch finished, I spoke to other fellow media from Malaysia because there were 40 over of us, which is great again, is that I just felt like I did not like how, every smartphone makers have that tendency of comparing within the Samsungs and the Apples of the world. But there were a few swipes which was given. It felt less classy. Like the way he was mentioning about how, the Samsung S25 Ultra is an Ultra phone, but it comes with this size milliamps of battery, this charging. But they're forgetting that they're still holding back on the 4K video camera. Unless if you're telling me that specs-wise, you really nailed it in every area, then fine.
Sure. But
that's not only it. I just found out when I was testing out the video cameras at night, the ultra-wide lens still records in 1080p also.
Okay. Fantastic.
So how can you call a phone ultra if you still record in 1080p? It should be called not so ultra, right? So, yeah, there's certain areas.
But maybe that's why they're admitting, shortcomings in certain way for some of the cameras.
I don't understand why. Because if you said last time it could be the chipset limitation, I understand, but you're using the Snapdragon 8 Elite, the best chipset, or if not the biggest rival for the MediaTek 9400, which is on the Vivo X200 Pro and also the Find X8 Pro.
Sure.
So I don't understand why. Like, because if you say you can record up to 8K on the main lens, or whatever configuration that you want to look moving forward. But if you still cannot record front 4K, knowing the fact that, everybody's a content creator now, and everybody is using the front cameras as much as possible, recording in 1080p in year 2025 just doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't sound like an ultra phone. I don't understand why, because...
I tend to agree with you there. But personally, when you record a selfie video, do you use 4K?
That's a very good question. I do use.
You do? Okay.
Umar from Product Nation, he uses 1080p.
Okay. Oh, he uses 1080p?
He uses 1080p because he told me that because he wants to upload it fast when it comes to his Instagram stories. I cannot take 1080p. Okay. I still feel like the 4K is just nice because Instagram, it's crisp. I know that Instagram tends to bring the resolution down.
Sometimes it judders and there's...
But I think the idea of using 4K and then you cut the resolution, it still looks okay on 1080p. Apparently, according to Uma and a lot of people who uses Instagram, they say that, if you upload on 1080p though, it will stay at 1080p. I don't trust Instagram. I rather...
So he's saying they don't downsample or compress it.
If you're going to upload. So that's one of the reasons why, like when Apit is doing his short form content or I'm doing it or Lehud is doing it, we always tend to make sure that the output, instead of 4K, we output at 1080p. I don't know whether it's working, but it helps with the algorithm apparently. So we just decided to do that. But that is also because we shoot in 6K. So if we're going to crop within or just zoom into some particular area, then fine, it gives us a bit more leeway or leg room to play around with. But for me, that is my only complaint, because I believe that this F series especially is also catered for people who like photography. And I've done like extreme comparison videos with the POCO F6, the F3, especially when it comes to cameras. And that's the only area which I felt like it was not ultra. But of course, that is a in-depth review video that will be releasing really soon, so stay tuned for that.
In general, the cameras are pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
As a flagship challenger kind of.
It is. So, if it's not the cameras, now, of course, they can flex on the fact that the flagship chipset is so good. That was great. But I understand that there's no such thing as a perfect phone, but I believe that could have been done in order for it to call the Ultra. Otherwise, just call it a Pro, right? Those
Maybe
two
they're
areas...
just riding on the trend of, phone makers naming their products with an Ultra for a flagship.
I think they're also riding on the fact that some of the specs does feel and seem like an Ultra, like the chipset and the charging speed and all. So maybe that's where the Ultra come in. But like I said, if they only came up with these two things, then I think it should be fine. A lot of people were pissed on the fact that it doesn't come with an eSIM. A lot of people commented in our hands-on video. To be honest, I didn't know until a lot of people complained about it, which is great. That's
are
why
you
we
a
love the
eSIM
comments.
guy or are you a physical SIM guy? Yeah.
So whenever I go to overseas, I will put my physical SIM to get my Malaysian related SMSs or like my banking stuff and all.
So when you're there,
when I'm there, I will get this data plan which is eSIM related.
Right.
I didn't realize it until people pointed it out. And the screen is also not LTPO, which for me I understand because of the price factor, but also
it is very affordable.
It is very affordable.
It's crazy
so like I said, for the screen wise, I can understand.
It's crazy how affordable it is.
I can understand from a screen perspective because that is a physical thing, but I still cannot understand the recording resolution. So if y'all have some crazy insights, let us know in the comment section below, because that, for the life of me, I just cannot understand that part. Okay, speaking of flying overseas, the next news is based on AirAsia's next or new power bank restrictions. So tell us your insights about that.
I mean, it first happened with, I think, Air Busan.
Oh, really?
Where an incident on flight happened, which is why
I remember the incident. Yeah.
Decided to ban, prohibit the use of power banks during the flight in the cabin. But I mean, having a power bank and carrying in the cabin is not something new. I mean, we've been able to do that for a while already, up to 20,000 milliampere.
Yeah.
But now the little catch is that if you bring it into the cabin, it has to be with you at all times.
Yeah.
It cannot be stored in the overhead compartment in your bag, and you're not able to use it. Means it's basically dead weight on you, whether maybe it's in your pouch or in your pocket, which is a bit of a weird thing for me.
Yeah.
And I'm the type who does not like to charge via the USB port on the plane.
Same.
Because number one, it's so freaking slow. Number two, security and privacy reasons.
And half the time it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You'll be like, what's wrong? Is my cable something wrong?
When it works. So, just things to note. Obviously, for any power bank, you cannot check it in as baggage, but you can bring it with you. But I find it's a little bit of a weird thing now that I cannot bring and use my power bank with me.
Yeah.
But of course, AirAsia isn't the only airline. There are a lot of other airlines that have started to enforce this rule. There's also a watt-hour rating of the power banks. I think 100 watt-hour, which is the maximum. And you are permitted to bring up to 5. I don't know why would you.
Yeah.
Why would you bring 5 power banks with you that you cannot use in the flight? So, what do you think about it? I mean, do you personally charge your phone?
Yeah, because I find
your devices.
I always found that, I mean, it's not AirAsia, but even other flights, like they have the 3-pin plug right at the side down. Half the time it doesn't work. So having that peace of mind that I have a power bank that will work and can charge faster. Now power banks are so advanced these days. And like what you said, is dead weight. Like already AirAsia has so many restrictions on. My biggest annoyance is that I need to share to everybody. So when we went to POCO, you can only bring a luggage, like hand carry with you, of 7 kgs, right?
And they're very strict about it. They will weigh it
on the spot. And for me, I don't like checking in my baggage. So I had to take out my own money and pay. So if you don't pay online, you pay 90 ringgit. So I paid 90 ringgit when I'm...
you were there, you didn't pre-book it.
Yeah, because we don't book the flights.
Right.
That was usually from the agency. So I paid myself 90 ringgit, and then coming back time, I got it online. My point is that I don't like that limitation because 7 kgs, what can you bring? And for me, I have my camera gear. I can't be checking in my camera gear. At the same time, they are also notoriously known to lose baggage. So I don't like the idea. So I've always going and coming. I was the only one, among everybody. They all did not mind checking in a bag. But I don't like the idea of checking in my bag and waiting at the belt. And we all seen all the horror videos of how people chuck their bags and all. And that's the same thing happened to my wife when she went to Barcelona. She followed for MWC. When the bag arrived, it was cracked. And she had to buy a new bag in Barcelona to make sure that when she come back, you won't have the similar issue. Because what if it breaks and totally gone, right? So
not something that will happen in Japan though. I've seen how they handle.
Yeah. So that video, there's a
delicate, right?
There was a video which I shared to my wife about how, they showed all the different countries. We're not gonna name drop the countries, but then they showed, if China, they got a cloth and then they wipe.
Yeah.
And then
I was a little surprised with China.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not surprised. So a lot of people are surprised.
I never thought they'd do that in China. But.
A lot of people are surprised, but when you go China recently, for Lihood and I, we always go there so often, they improved a ton. Especially in Shenzhen. Shenzhen is 40 minutes train from Hong Kong. The difference between how Hong Kong is and how Shenzhen is really like night and day. And yeah, so China is great. Japan, of course, we know that because, like from the football team cleaning up their dressing areas and stuff like that. It's been great.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so for me, if I had to be totally honest, with all of this, I'll try my best to avoid as moving forward. Sorry, Mr. Tony Fernandez. I know we just met recently, but not for me.
No, maybe it's not particularly AirAsia, but low cost.
Do you think
airlines
that?
in
Okay,
general.
now that you say that a lot of flights are already implementing this,
Around
do
the
you
world, not just AirAsia.
Yeah, do you
not
think
just-
that this is going to be standardized for all the flights, or you
I
feel
mean-
like other flights have it in control?
I mean, until they can improve the safety of power banks, maybe, or the usage of power banks. I mean, is there a safety standard for power banks? I don't know. I have heard of power banks blowing up and catching fire. My personal story is just maybe power banks that have, gone swollen in terms of the battery cells, and that happens over time, even in our old phones, right? It used to happen. But whether you can guarantee that, I think, again, this is a safety measure. It's indefinite. It's effective 1st April for AirAsia and a lot of airlines as well.
Okay.
So not something we can fight or challenge.
But if
until they,
it's not a standardized thing, then how are other airlines controlling this then? Is like, why isn't it a standardized thing where everybody follows? Like there are some flights that say, yeah, it's fine, some is not fine. Is it because a precautionary thing or?
It is precautionary, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's precautionary.
That's understandable. But yeah, let us know your thoughts about this in the comments below because we would love to know your feedback based on this. Okay, the next one we're going to be talking about is WWDC. The announcement is officially done. So the invites are not out yet, but the date is June 9th. And just recently, we also got an update to get the AirPods Max to use Lossless. But before we talk about Lossless on AirPods Max, let's talk about WWDC itself first and foremost. You did talk behind the scenes earlier before this on what could possibly be the name for the new Max or what are your guesses on that?
With every release of macOS, there's always a code name tied to it, right? So we're currently at Sequoia. And I think since macOS 10.9, Apple has used locations in California to name their different major releases, right? The .1 releases.
Yeah.
And we've had Mavericks, we have El Capitan, we'll have, so many more. And there isn't one at the moment that's been announced.
Okay.
So I'm just speculating what it could be.
So what is your
What do you think?
speculation?
I have no idea. I mean, I don't live in California. I'm not so...
That's true.
Maybe you call it Grand Rapids or whatever.
I like the days where Mac used to use animals. Like, you remember Mac OS lion and leopard and snow leopard?
Yes.
Can we go back to those days, please?
I think they ran out of big cats. They were using big cats.
They could use like maybe like mammoth, like something
Prehistoric animals.
Yeah, possibly velociraptor.
I do understand the reasoning behind using California locations, which is nice, which is quite iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are looking at, of course, the latest versions of Mac OS 16, which replaces, or the update, which is from Sequoia. iOS 19, we're going to talk about that a little in a short moment. iPad OS 19, Watch OS 12, Vision OS 3, TV OS 19, and HomePod software 19 as well. Let's talk about iOS so far. There have been lots of people talking about how iOS 18 has been unstable for them. Can you tell me whether or not you have been going through anything or it's fine?
Unstable, with every software release, there are obviously some bugs and fixes. For me, majorly, sometimes the screen freezes when I'm in, let's say, WhatsApp or Telegram. I get that sometimes.
Okay.
Battery drain at one point was a bit of an issue. there was a fix where you turn off Apple Intelligence, and that actually improved
really?
things. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And I tried that for a little while, but I kind of miss Apple Intelligence, so I've turned it back on. But otherwise, nothing too major.
Okay.
I think previous releases, I had a bit of a problem with camera.
Okay.
Whenever I shoot a projection or a screen, the colors just go way off. I get banding.
Oh.
And I actually sent some screenshots to Apple support on X, but I should say Twitter, not X.
Okay.
But I didn't get any reply for that, and there was no fix. But it seems to have sorted itself out, maybe through minor bug releases, fixes and stuff like that.
Okay. For me, iOS 18 has been okay so far. I didn't had any issues where I saw a lot of people talking about the camera freezes. I do know people who went through it. Thankfully, I didn't. But there's this one thing which I still get frequently, but it doesn't really affect me as much. There's this weird, like those glitch distortion effect.
What on yours?
On my screen. So sometimes when I lock my phone and when there's a slight.
Oh really?
It's like a glitch effect, like we use it for our videos.
Never heard of it. Never seen
so
it.
I get that very frequently. Like I say, it doesn't bug me as much. iOS 17 had a major issue with my home, my smart home stuff, my HomeKit stuff, where everything went haywire. Thankfully, did not this time around because it was such a pain in the butt to redo everything at all. There was a slight issue with CarPlay because I use CarPlay, but after the latest release or the bug that fixed that, but nothing major for me.
Now that you've talked about CarPlay, do you get instances where when you're connected, whether wirelessly or wired, it just shuts off intermittently, then comes back on in CarPlay? It disconnects.
Oh, for me, it didn't disconnect. I couldn't even connect to it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've found
connected,
it
I
in
was
different
fine.
cars.
Okay.
On several Kia cars, CarPlay did that.
Okay.
Toyota, Corolla did that. And a couple of other cars with CarPlay. And I was wondering if this is a common bug with anyone. Is it iPhone related or is it? I'm just not sure.
My issue was not, when it's connected, it's totally fine. But I had issues with getting it connected.
Okay.
And this also started to happen because my
Wired
wife drives
or
my car
wireless?
wireless.
Okay.
Wired is okay. But this also started when there were occasional times whereby just said it's default connected to my phone because my wife drives my car sometimes too. So sometimes, like how when I just say I stop at the side of the road or maybe at the side of the shop and I want to get down, so we'll connect to her phone. And when I come back again, it suddenly goes like, oh, which phone do I get connected? Ooh, and then it panics and then it stops. But that has been already rectified now.
Okay.
But I have a question because you are a heavy iPad user. I have
Not using my iPad today though.
Yeah, I know. But for me, the iPad has been very stable. I never had a single issue on the iPad OS 18. Neither previously. Like there was no issue with battery drain. It has been just consistently good. Is it just for me or has it been for you? Because I know you use the iPad a little more than
I think generally it has been very stable. But I use a very old iPad. I'm using 2018 iPad Pro 12.
But have you updated the latest software then?
It is latest. Yeah. What I do notice is it's getting slower now.
There you go. Okay. Which is the iPad you have right now?
2018 iPad Pro 12.9.
Mm.
So maybe it's forcing me to upgrade to a new one. I don't know.
Possibly.
But I have noticed since iOS 18 that it has gone quite slow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of iOS 18, let's just go back again. We had people like John Prosser and all talking about, because there was this huge rumor about how they're going to go a bit more like curvy, complete redesign. Yeah. But John Prosser said no.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He did a video and I was like, no, it's just going to be very tiny tweaks.
But according to what has been said, online, people are quoting him about this big design change. And he says the biggest design change since iOS 7.
But we all have to wait and see when WWDC.
But do you agree that it could look a lot more like Vision OS. I know that's what the rumors are saying.
Yeah, the rumor says that. I don't think so because it's just 19, maybe iOS 20, maybe because 19, maybe not.
Round icons.
Yeah, possibly.
I'm not a fan of round icons because
Same.
that reminds me of Android.
Yeah, it looks very Android. Number one. Number two, I just want one thing. I want to be able to remove the text from the icon without making the icons large. So because you have both, you remove the text, but you cannot make the icons smaller. You can make the icons smaller, but the text is there. Why don't you let me to do just?
That's why you have Android.
Yeah, that's true.
For more customizations, switch.
Watch OS has been fine also. You use the Apple Watch, so do I.
Not anymore.
Oh, you don't? What is that?
Because my Apple Watch crapped out.
Oh,
so
really?
I decided to try this Amazfit
Oh, nice.
Trax 3, which is actually really good.
Okay, Vernon is going to do a review here. But you know what? I have a question based on the TV OS. Because when's the last time they had a major overhaul on the TV OS? I use the Apple TV at home a lot. That's my main thing, even though I'm using...
Major overhaul, not recently.
Yeah. I believe that, with the rising of all their shows like Severance and...
Which I love. It's amazing.
And my point is that maybe they should... Hopefully, TV OS 19 would do something nicer, perhaps.
How would you change TV OS?
If you say that Vision OS... I like how Vision OS looks like. So if they could streamline to make TV OS the same as Vision OS.
Here's the thing, right? What they're saying is about streamlining all the different OSs, making it a little bit more consistent.
Yeah.
Overall, the user experience. But the thing is, every screen is different.
Okay.
How you interact with TV
Yeah.
and your mobile phone and your laptop and your iPad is all different.
Yeah.
Imagine CarPlay looking exactly the same as macOS or
true.
macOS looking exactly the same as iPadOS or tvOS. It doesn't make sense in that sense.
Good point.
But maybe they can surprise us. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just an icon change.
I just want a different look to it. You get what I mean? Because I've been looking at the same icons, the same arrangements for the longest time. I just feel like there's not enough love for tvOS, neither. And I mean, this is the same for even the HomePod, because it's such a good device, but possibly not the best when it comes to how the software looks. So hopefully, imagine how the whole entire HomeKit, maybe there's a new look to it. It would be nice. At least you look at it, it feels new.
Yeah. But don't get me wrong, I think the Vision OS UI and UX is amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's
it looks
very
so good.
slick. The animation is so slick and nice, right?
It looks like a brand new icon pack, which you can do it on an Android device, of course. But yeah. Let's talk about lossless audio on the AirPods Max.
It's a bit misleading. I feel the information about lossless audio for AirPods Max.
In what way?
This release really is tied to the USB-C version.
That's
not
correct.
so much the Lightning port version.
That's correct.
So some people are getting a little bit confused.
And getting pissed.
I didn't have
a lot of people
audio
is like,
with mine.
yeah.
But that's not true. It's just that this update is specifically for the USB-C version, which is the new version of the AirPods Max. Much welcome, finally, to have lossless audio. Wireless, by the way, so low latency and all that is for the wireless version. When you're plugged in, it's lossless. It's low latency anyway. Yeah.
Of course, there's a huge argument about whether or not you can hear the difference between...
Some people can. Yeah. I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
You've got very sensitive ears.
Yes, I do.
Being a musician and singer and all that. And you love your music, I know.
Yes.
And audio is really important for you, as with for me.
Yes.
So I can hear differences. Yeah. But not many people do.
Yeah.
But which is also why I think I much prefer Apple Music compared to other streaming services like Spotify.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I always shit on Spotify a lot.
Yeah. So everything's encoded, lossless and high res, so you get literally the best audio quality that you can. In your ears.
And you're right, because when I explain to people why I don't like Spotify, I tell them because the audio quality on Apple Music is way much better and they come back to me and say, oh, I can't tell the difference. And I go like, oh my God, why lah? I'm like, you really cannot tell the difference? And I don't think it's a musician thing or it's an audiophile thing. There is a huge difference. Just stop your subscription with Spotify and change to Apple or even Tidal. Tidal is more expensive.
Yeah.
And I still
Also
do
limited.
it's
a slightly more limited library, right?
Yes, correct. That's one of the only reasons why I still tell people, you know what? Tidal is fine, but it's a limited library. Apple Music, ever since they introduced their lossless, it's still more affordable than Spotify and it's still overall better quality. I think it's a household name thing. You know, like how, like phones in the US, it's not called, hey, can you pass me the phone? Or, can you pass me my iPhone? And like we, in Malaysia, we use Dettol.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to put some Dettol and clean this up.
Noun,
I need to use
noun
Clorox.
becomes a verb, right?
Yes, exactly. So I think that's the similar thing when it comes to streaming. When they say streaming, audio immediately comes to their mind is Spotify. Speaking of which, I just saw our analytics on Buzzsprout that the percentage of people listening to this on Apple Podcasts is highest. So thank you guys so much.
Really? Wow.
I'm glad to hear
nice.
that. Yeah, so that's
nice
good.
to hear that.
Especially our last episode that we did together. So the percentage of people listening on Apple Podcasts is higher than Spotify. So yes, that's good. Thank you guys.
What about YouTube audio? What do you think about that? I mean, sorry, digressing.
No, very good question. YouTube audio sucks. YouTube music sucks. The only best thing that YouTube music has is that the library, like you can find anything, right? I never use it. But I do know people like Lihud, he uses it because he can get anything, which is true. Because what still annoys me, but I can understand from a musician point of view, is that there are certain albums which is not available on streaming platforms. Like even for us, Dragon Raid's second album is not on streaming platforms because we didn't have the licensing, because that was under Universal Music too, and the deal was different compared to our first album. So you cannot find our second album on streaming platforms because there's this huge licensing thing. Alter Bridge, the Alter Bridge AB3, that album is not on any streaming platforms, but you can find it on YouTube Music. So that's the only time where I feel like, okay, I want to use YouTube Music.
Are you a premium subscriber on YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay. Same.
So even though with a premium subscriber account,
slightly better audio quality apparently.
No, I don't agree.
You don't think so?
Yeah, I don't agree. That's what they claim. That one I can tell that it sounds like you're just gonna.
The only time I use YouTube Music is when I'm at the gym on a treadmill, because I watch the music videos.
Oh, okay,
on, YouTube Music.
Okay.
I wish Apple Music had more music videos.
Yeah, they do, but they don't have as much.
But I mean, YouTube being YouTube, they have the entire library, right?
Yeah.
For music videos and all that. So
yeah,
it's nice that it's tied to some playlists that I have on YouTube videos.
Nice.
So it's easier to kind of watch it when I'm running, because if not, I get bored.
That's interesting. But at this point in time, we would also love to know what exact streaming platforms that you use for audio. Is it still Spotify? If it is Spotify, please make the change to Apple Music. And probably only then you can actually hear the proper differences between lossless audio on the AirPods Max. But I do feel for those people who's using the Lightning port version of the AirPods Max, but that is how tech is, right? Always making sure that they keep the newer customers happier, the ones who bought the new ones. Thankfully, we do have the USB-C version of the AirPods Max. I purposely got the purple because I just love how the purple looks like. It is right there. You can see off the camera. It's just right there. You can see it. Of course, you all cannot see it, but yeah, I love it. And for me, I can tell the difference. I do know that some people say that they cannot tell the difference. Trust me, if you use Apple Music, you can tell the difference for the lossless audio.
Oh, the other thing is it's about spatial audio, right?
Yeah.
So you get
the personalized spatial audio.
Yeah,
that is also a latest update. Yeah. So other than the lossless audio, there's also personalized, because
I'm not sure if everybody can hear it, spatial. I'm not too sure. I feel some people cannot sense the movement of sound.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, everybody that I knew could, but that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, also another thing that when I was on the way to Singapore is that they also have their own hearing test to test out.
That is amazing. I think that's groundbreaking.
And Here's an interesting thing. I didn't do a video about it because I was busy traveling and all. So before that update came out, we of course went for our own testing by ourselves, and
Using what? What do
the
you use?
AirPods,
Oh, the
using
AirPods.
the AirPods Pro, right?
Yeah.
In January 2025, which is this year, I went for a full medical checkup, including an hearing test.
Wow, I've never had a medical checkup with a hearing test before.
I always do it, and unfortunately for me, my left ear apparently is not the best.
Oh.
It's like a A- instead of A+. I was like, what? This cannot be happening. But for years and years of listening to loud music and concerts and doing event management and performing like loud music, I can kind of understand. So when I tested out this particular AirPods Pro's hearing test, guess what? It was exactly the same. It did say that my left ears was not as good as my right ear. So it is true when they say that it is clinically proven. Yeah. What's interesting is that,
right?
It is medical grade. And what's interesting is that they also help you to adjust some settings for those who have major issues. So before you go out and go and seek for professional help on that, the AirPods Pro can already help to do certain amplification and all, which is interesting because, again, this is not a separate device. This is the same AirPods Pro.
Yeah. And you know, hearing aids are so expensive. They can cost tens of thousands of ringgit for people with, hearing loss. And so this is kind of a way of democratizing hearing aids, especially for those, with minor hearing.
But one huge caveat though, same like the AirPods Max USB-C, this is only available for the AirPods Pro USB-C, so not the Lightning version. Yeah, so if you're wondering why the Lightning version does not work, because it does not work for that.
It's firmware locked.
Yeah, not say it doesn't work. It works how it is, but you don't have the hearing test functionality for the Lightning version of the USB-C. Or it works on the USB-C, but it does not work on the Lightning version of the AirPods Pro.
I wonder why.
It's the same case on this. So yeah, that was
a different chip.
I don't think so. I think it's the same chip.
Need to look that up now.
Yeah, we will look that up. Yeah. So okay. So one news that came up to us last night was the new release of the Nintendo Switch 2. So as I mentioned many times before, I am not a huge gamer. The only device which I felt like it spoke to me was the Lenovo Legion Go S. So yeah, just give everybody the rundown for like a TLDR factor about the Nintendo Switch 2.
Wow, new Switch, which is interesting. It's bigger.
Okay.
So what they found out was that initially when the Switch came out in 2017. I think Nintendo was figuring out whether people were actually putting it in their pockets to store them and bring it around. But apparently people don't. So might as well go the whole shebang, make it bigger. Because then you get a bigger display, which is 7.9 inch.
Yeah.
I think it's OLED, right? It's OLED display.
No, it's not OLED.
It's
display.
not OLED?
Yeah, it's not OLED.
Okay, corrected.
Okay.
7.9, bigger display. And which with VRR, variable refresh rate, 120 hertz. It's got new magnetic Joy-Con.
Yeah, so that was quite interesting.
Yeah, interesting magnet. So it aligns itself when you plug it back into the main console. It's also got a brand new feature, which I feel was inspired by the Legion Go.
Which
is the Joy-Con can be transformed into a mouse. For you to play like things like FPS, which makes it easier, right? Well, it looks. I mean, overall, the Nintendo Switch 2 looks good, but it's also a lot more expensive.
Exactly.
The previous one was what, $230 USD?
It was around that, but right now it costs $449 USD. But what annoys me, and this annoys me throughout every console game, even PlayStation, is the pricing for their games. It's like currently games like Donkey Kong can go between 70 to 80 USD.
Wow, that's what, $350 $320.
Yeah.
More than that, $350.
And we're not talking about like super
350.
triple A game graphics and stuff like that. What are your thoughts about this? Because people like Arun Maini and even MKBHD, he was talking about that was the biggest like issue
Deal breaker,
that a lot of people, or deal breaker that a lot of people had. 70 to 80 USD. Would you spend that much money on a game like that?
I mean, if you love it that much, yes. The second reason would be because it's exclusive. So it's only exclusive to the Switch 2. And you cannot play it on any other platform. I mean, I've seen some videos and I don't think Donkey Kong is a remarkable game.
Yeah.
Maybe Mario Kart World is interesting because you get a multiplayer thing. You can play your friends, on the same screen and race with them, which is nice.
Yep.
But $80 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it's a lot of money to pay for a game. True fans will probably just say, yeah, okay, why not? But I feel that Nintendo is overpricing it.
Yeah, I think
Maybe it costs a lot to make the console itself, and they're trying to make back some bucks, or they're just trying to increase their margins.
not only that the console costs more, but they don't even give any free games, right? So at least PlayStation had the Astros Playroom, which really, the reason why they shipped together with that particular game is because it is the best way to really feel how the game controller is. When you walk on a glass surface, you can feel that sort of thing. And so knowing the fact that it costs that much and the price for the game is also going so much higher, I don't think it's going to be selling like how the Nintendo Switch did, or even the OLED for that matter.
Not too sure about that. But I mean, other things that worth mentioning is more storage. Because previously there was only like 32 gigabytes and you upgrade with a SD card or whatever. But now it starts from 256 gigs.
Okay, that's a good argument.
Yeah.
Because that's one of my biggest struggles on the PS5. Because like 1 terabyte is never enough. And you always think about how, I want to delete this game, but I don't. I'm playing it halfway. And eventually you just don't play it at all. But yeah, so
256 gig is not a lot in modern days. You probably get to install maybe 5 to 6 games tops.
yeah.
So.
I think the Nintendo Switch, like what Arun mentioned, it's more of a collaborative game, and you probably don't need these heavy graphic games. That is not what Nintendo.
And the graphics not that great either, right?
Still is not. They even did their demonstration about how there's a new camera which is 50 USD to give you that sort of like a something like as though you're doing a
Twitch
kind of thing where you cuts off the background, which is cool.
Which is kind of nice, yeah.
But yeah, Nintendo Switch in general has always been like a family together gaming thing ever since the Wii was introduced, right?
But Aaron did mention that it looks like they're going a little bit more, kind of like a more mature crowd.
Yeah.
So games are getting a bit more mature, less cartoony and less Donkey Kong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Mario.
But Donkey Kong has a pants now.
Yeah, I know.
So it's like, oh, that's a new upgrade. He's got a pants. Upgraded pants.
And you get to play Cyberpunk as well on
yeah. I guess that's the AAA games, but I'm not sure how much of a gigabyte space that you need for that. But yeah, that's actually quite interesting. But I feel that it's not going to sell as well compared to the Switch one. But what do you think about that?
I mean, it's hard to say. I don't understand the mind of the consumer and people who buys portable games.
That's true.
Game consoles.
That's very.
But one thing that Aaron did bring up during his video, watching his video, was that you need to pay for the tutorial.
Yeah.
Which is I found very amusing.
Yeah, I know.
Where it was free on the PS5. I mean, it's quite interesting.
That's why I'm saying it's like being a gamer is so expensive now, right? I feel like I want to get into it. Also, I'm like, but it's so expensive. Games are expensive, but now the console are expensive. And already before this, whenever I see a Nintendo Switch on, like when I would go to US, like on Best Buy and all, I eventually go like, should I buy it? how many games there are there? Oh, just a few games. Okay, I'm going to play it for a while. And like I said, I suck at Mario Kart either way. So my point is that I feel it's not going to be selling, but I might be wrong, or I most probably am wrong about this. We do have some hardcore Nintendo Switch guys who will appreciate the games and don't mind. Maybe they're just like a hardcore Nintendo Switch user, which they don't care about any other console. Then maybe they will buy it. Yeah. Would you buy it?
I do like the Switch, but I don't like it enough to buy one.
Have you tried the OLED version?
Yes.
Okay, so comparing with the OLED version and the non-OLED, did you find from a gameplay perspective that it was a huge difference?
No.
Oh, there you go.
Not a huge difference. But question for you is, which kind of platform would you choose? Would it be something like a Nintendo Switch? Or would it be something like a Steam Deck or a Lenovo Go? Maybe an ASUS Ally kind of platform?
Very good question. I think based on my research and trying on every platform, although we only did an in-depth review on the Lenovo Legion Go S, we tried the ROG Ally as well. I tried the Steam Deck. I think the only thing which I wish that the Lenovo Legion Go S has in Malaysia is the Steam OS version. Because I felt like, you know how Windows can be.
Windows is terrible on a console.
Because from a performance ergonomic wise, it's so nice. But again, if it's on Steam, then I'll be like, okay, yay, you know. So that's my platform.
You can install a Steam launcher on it.
Yes.
Right. So it doesn't have Windows per se.
No, I didn't try that yet. But yeah, that would be something which we can actually look forward to. Lah. Okay, so that would be for the Nintendo Switch 2. About a week ago, you shared this very interesting video. Yeah, so we will put this exact video link down below for you guys to check it out. So it's basically a very interesting video about how a robot, instead of you typically programming what to do, it has a lot of learning capabilities. So it's almost like you're having a baby with you, whereby they learn through the process. So tell us about what you found most intriguing about this particular video.
I think you described it really well. As it starts as a baby. So this robot dog, it could be any hardware, right?
Yeah.
So InCell, what they've done is, IntuiCell is a company that developed this software for enabling any machine to learn like humans or animals do. So which is what you see in this video, right? Where not typically AI or machine learning where you feed it a lot of data and then it try and figures out what to do, right? When you see in the demo is you're asking the machine to stand up. How does it understand the context of standing up? It's like a baby trying to figure out, I have legs. And then I'm trying to get on my feet and trying to stand up or at least crawl. And the robot figures it out on its own, that it has 4 legs, the context of standing up. And then what it tries to do, they've ran another experiment where it gives it texture and different environments for it to kind of adapt to, and it adapts.
Yeah.
So it's different from us trying to just feed a computer with just data, like how AI and machine learning happens with LLM and all that stuff. But this one is literally like a digital nervous system.
Yes,
that's
correct.
What they mentioned, digital nervous system that they developed, and for a machine to kind of learn on its own, understand the context of it.
In a world where there's too many AI things going on, other than the fact that this is very refreshing, like, finally something is different from how it is always available. But why does this matter, and why does this sound more interesting towards the general thing which is going on right now, or even for you and I, for example? Why do you think that that's a bit more interesting compared to what's already available right now?
I mean, it's fascinating and scary at the same time that a machine can self-learn on its own. And and it's just like any human being doing something for the first time or trying to figure out something. So the robot or the machine figures out on its own. I feel that opens up a lot of opportunity in many different kind of use cases and industries. It'll be a step up from just having like a dumb robot moving about. Yeah.
I think the usage of components, probably for a more learning-based robot, it has to come down to maybe not so much of GPU computing, because it's not producing things. It is learning and just going back to the so-called storage or whatever, the memory to replicate what I've just learned. I like for example, like once it learns how to walk, put an ice there, so, oh, there's an ice here. So it tries to balance itself. It's scary, but it's exciting. And
it is.
Do you think from a cost perspective, because like I said, we are possibly looking at reductions of like putting like big GPUs, like what you use for your OpenAI and all stuff. Do you think that it would be something that long-term wise that will reduce cost to have something like this rather than your LLMs?
I mean that's tech for you, right? There's always advancement in manufacturing processes, in volume, miniaturization of chips, as you know, whether it's NVIDIA or whoever else. That's definitely going to happen. And when that happens, of course, new tech will always be expensive.
Yeah.
But as time goes on and things improve and you get scale and mass, things are going to get cheaper. So
it's true.
Things will be democratized in some way in the future.
So we'll put a video link down below for you guys to check it out, whether or not you're listening or watching this video. But it's a very interesting video. You should check it out. Something which Vernon found, and it was definitely opens our eyes a little more than just what's going on from the world of AI. We did had a community segment question, surprised us a lot, because the question was, what are your priorities when purchasing a smartphone? Is it a chipset, camera performance, price or software? Let us know in the comment section below. Majority people, when we say everything is important, but the reason why the comments was like, everything's important. Of course, we do know everything is important, but we wanted to really get you to choose, right? So people in the community has voted for a chipset to be the most important thing, which personally for me, I don't look for the chipset first. That's one of the reasons why, even if the chipset is a MediaTek or if it's a Snapdragon, I don't go like, oh, it's a MediaTek, I don't want to touch it. Oh, it's a Snapdragon, I prefer what MediaTek does. Oh, it's an Exynos, I'm not going to touch it, I'm going to throw it away. I will still use it, because I'm not saying that each chip is not better than each other, but I would test it from a day-to-day use. What is your thoughts about this? 42% chipset. Number 2 came in from the cameras, which is understandable, but price is 15%. So apparently people don't mind paying a lot of money. So that's quite funny.
I'm quite intrigued and fascinated by the insight here. Looking at chipset as kind of the most important element that influences my purchase of a device. For me, it's the first thing I look at is platform. Meaning, what ecosystem am I buying into? Am I looking at Android? Am I looking at iOS or Apple? So it's a bit weird. Maybe it's answered in the software.
Software, yeah, that could be.
Maybe it's answered in the software.
But it's still not a priority though. It's still
I find chipset is maybe it's a very Android thing. In the Android world, it's very important for hardware specs. For us being in a kind of an Apple ecosystem, we rarely talk about specs too much. It's really about the benefits. I care whether it's fast enough, whether it drains my battery, whether it's slick and smooth, whether the OS is slick and smooth, whether I take good pictures or take good video. And that's what I care about. Not so much the specs per se that say, hey, if it's not Apple Silicon, I don't want it.
Okay.
Or whether it's a Qualcomm, or MediaTek, or Snapdragon, which is a bit
exactly. So if you were to rearrange the priorities, which one would you go with? Number 1, number 2, and number 3, and number 4? Since there's 4 different choices here.
I would go platform or software first, and then price. And then camera, I guess chipset would be probably the last thing I look at.
Okay, I would arrange it. Yeah.
Because honestly, if you look at the price and you judge by the price, you know that it's a flagship or not,
Yes, exactly.
right?
Yeah. For me, I would arrange for the camera first
Ooh, interesting.
because I've been using cameras on the phone more than really using a camera, especially when I'm outside from the studio.
What if you get a superb camera but a crappy chipset that is so slow that when you press the shutter, it takes 2 seconds to capture a photo? It's a brilliant photo. But it
Very
takes
good
2
point.
seconds.
Then you'll take the phone, you want to throw it against the wall. It's a good point, though.
I'm just saying.
No, it's
you
a
know?
very good point. Maybe that's the reason why people say the chipset is important because,
Maybe.
yeah, that could
I guess
be
it's the basis of everything else that you do.
Could be because if the chipset sucks, like what you said, that in cameras, but yeah,
Like
I mean,
MediaTek
you have
6756.
you have a very good point, but I would still arrange the camera first, and then I will go with the price,
Okay.
and then I will go with the software. Or probably I will go with the camera followed by software first, because if the cameras are good and if the software is still janky or it's hard for you to reach certain things that will be irritating, and it also, like what you said, it could be the platform. But I would still put the camera first, software second, price and chipset is last.
Yeah,
But you got a very good point. After when you said that, then it made me understand maybe why people say chipset.
Yeah, because remember the early days, there were some good camera phones, but they was just so slow because chipsets weren't quite there
Yeah,
yet.
like
right?
the Nokia days.
Yeah, the Nokia
days, the cameras were
good
good,
photos.
but remember when you take photo, it's
Yeah,
like there's
good
a
hardware.
shutter delay.
Yeah, but
that
there
was
was a shutter delay. Asus had a problem with some of the Zen phones in the early days,
yeah.
and you get blurry shots because the subject has left the building, kind of thing. By the time the shutter closes,
Alamak gone.
but
Nice.
yeah.
Okay.
But
so
it's
you
an
would
interesting
arrange,
insight, yeah,
It's a very interesting
for the
insight, and I think it's a good way for all of y'all to give your feedback. If you haven't given your feedback at the community tab, just comment down below. Let us know what is your priorities. If you had to arrange between the chipset, camera, price, and software. So that is great. Stay tuned for our next question they're going to be asking. We're going to make sure it's going to be something like this, which is a bit more interesting, but we can talk about. Okay, before we close the whole entire podcast session or the episode, we released a total of 5 videos last week during the
So
whole,
hardworking during Raya holidays.
yeah. We actually work backwards because we know everybody's going to be going for their Raya holiday, so it's a release everything fast. First video was the Tinko Floor 1 S9 Artist. The whole, and
What a
ever
name.
since we came to this new studio, we never reviewed a vacuum video, which is quite interesting because we made sure that we arranged and set design the downstairs area to make sure that we review a lot of vacuums, but we didn't get it. This one was quite interesting because this floor washer, this 3-in-1 whereby it mops and it cleans after itself and it vacuums at the same time, was always a hit or miss. Like Roborock was great, Airbot was great, but this has not only been tested during the review period, but it was tested in my house after the family came over for makan during Hari Raya. So I have the Dyson vacuum with the green color light to see whether you can see Luna's fur and all, right? And what I did is that instead of me using the Dyson vacuum first, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to use the Tinko S9 Artist because I still have the vacuum, right? So I did it, I cleaned, it looked cleaned, although it didn't feel clean at first because the amount of water it produces out when it comes out, it is not like very wet.
Right.
So we are so used to, when you mop, you put lots of water and you whack the filler. So this one, the amount of water I felt was a bit lesser than what I wanted to, and there's no manual way to spray the water. And to cut the story short, after I was done cleaning, the floor felt cleaner. And at the same time, when I used the Dyson, I couldn't see a single dirt. Something which I could not get on any other floor washer. So this is a very good floor washer. I highly recommend. And the fact that it can go all the way down flat, that for me was mind-blowing because That
so
was
it's
the
one of
biggest-
those stick
It is
form
this
factor ones,
big,
right?
yeah. So
okay.
it is the stick ones where usually like your Roborock or your AirPods of the world, you cannot go all the way down. When you go all the way down, it's like an L shape. So when you go
Yeah.
down, it goes up. It doesn't flex
Yeah.
flat. So this flex flat. This lays down flat, which means that you can go under your sofa, under anything at all. So this is definitely my favorite 3-in-1 floor washer because
What
it was so
was
easy.
the price point for this? Is
Can't
it
remember.
Tineco? Is
Yeah,
that how
no, it's pronounced as Tinco.
Tinco?
So it's a silent E.
Silent E.
So yeah, let me just go and get the exact price. I think we'll put it down below. But yeah, it is definitely a very good
Is
3-in-1.
this like a China brand or is it local? Tinco.
Tinco, I think it's not local. Yeah. That's interesting. It's interesting you asked me the question because I didn't even cover where is it from. I
Yeah.
just think that it's actually a very...
Because I mean, there is kind of like a widespread brands of China brands there in
that's
the
true.
market.
Wait, let me just go
Super
online and just
affordable
find out.
compared
So
to let's say
Tinco-
Dyson, right?
Tinco's China.
China, right?
So that's interesting.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was we review a lot of these vacuums and it's been a long time. This is really good. We also released F7 Ultra's hands-on. We talked about that earlier about how I felt like he was losing that so-called 4K front camera. I just finished using the phone. I'm finishing off the script and then we'll release a in-depth review hopefully next week. We also release our in-depth review of the Lenovo Legion Go S.
Nice.
Everything that you need to know about that. It's a very good handheld. It's the first ever handheld which makes me feel like I want to game on it more. We also reviewed the Asus VivoBook 14, a very good AI-based. I like how the fact that it's not only from Microsoft Copilot, but Asus has their own AI, which was great. So if you haven't seen that video, be sure to check out that video if you guys haven't done so. And then I switched from the S25 Ultra using the base S25. I was very surprised because it to me it was very refreshing because it seemed like how when you use a regular iPhone going to the iPhone mini. So the switch was interesting, and a lot of people apparently commented and said that they did the same switch too.
Right.
But I did it for the sake of really like moving and trying it out. Of course, I prefer the S25 Ultra. I did say that the bigger screen is better, but I do know some people comment in the comments to say that, yeah, that's exactly what I did. Would you do something like that? Would you try a smaller phone?
Yeah,
Because in the end of the day, like what I said at the end of the video, it's all about using the things that really matters.
Yeah, it's true. I agree with that. Using the thing that really matters. I mean, features that really matter. And sometimes you just want a smaller phone because an Ultra can be quite unwieldy. It's really quite big, right?
Yeah.
And some people just like small phones.
There you go.
Smaller phones. Yeah.
So that was last week's videos. We are in the midst of doing our POCO F7 Ultra in-depth review. Took tons of videos and pictures, not only in Singapore, but here in Malaysia as well. And Samsung A56 review. Spoiler alert, it is really a good phone.
Oh, yeah?
But there are certain things that made me go like, But I think with a sub 2,999 ringgit, there are a lot of competitions out there, like the Nothing Phone 3A Pro, and also the Redmi Note 14 series, the Pro Plus. But yeah, I think that is quite a phone which I've been daily driving throughout the Raya. So you'll see some Raya photos here and there as well, which is actually very good.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the videos coming up. And with that, we like to conclude episode 12. Thank you so much, Vernon, for coming back. And
Thank you for having me. It's been fun as usual.
And of course, we will see you guys next week. My name is Adam Lobo.
And my name is Vernon.
We will see you guys next week for episode 13. Bye-bye.